Welcome to the Auto Charge Garage. In this video and on the website, you'll find a lot of helpful information to diagnose and follow steps to replace alternators for automotive vehicles. Now, this video reviews the steps that you need to take in order to replace the alternator. Now, typically, this job should take just over an hour, but having said that, some engine bays are packed pretty tightly, and you might need to move other items out of the way in order to access the alternator. Now, if you're still not sure if the alternator is the source of your problem, use the diagnosing guide on the Autocharge Garage Alternators webpage to run through the typical process of checking the electrical system. And you can also remove the alternator and take it to your local auto parts store, and they can run it on a test machine to quickly diagnose whether it is the alternator that really is in need of replacement. Now, the first step is to disconnect the electrical system. This is done by removing the black or the negative cable from the battery and moving it out of the way. Now, depending on the engine type, the alternator may be at the front of the vehicle if the engine is a front-facing engine, or it may also be on the side, typically the right side of the engine bay, facing towards the right wheel. This can mean that you will have limited access, and in some cases it may be easier to remove the wheel well plastic protectors to get better access. And this will entirely depend on the vehicle. Now, once you've accessed the alternator, the first thing to do is to identify and label the cables connected to it. Now, one suggestion is to snap a picture of them connected before you remove them so that you can put them back in the correct place. Now, if you scroll down on the website page for alternators, we provided an explanation for what the different cables are used for. Now, before removing the alternator, you'll need to remove the belt on the pulley. Now, for most modern vehicles, it will likely be a serpentine belt which drives multiple other parts of the engine in addition to the alternator at the same time. Now, if this is the type of belt and pulley system, you'll need to identify the belt tensioner wheel, which makes the belt tighten around the pulleys. And you should be able to use a socket on the bolt of the tensioner pulley to release the tension on the belt. And then you can slip the belt over the alternator pulley. I'd leave the belt in place if it's possible so that you don't have to reinstall the entire belt. Now, an older style of belt system has the alternator belt being driven straight from the engine. And in this case, you will need to loosen the alternator bolts and pivot the alternator enough to be able to loosen the belt from the pulley. You need to loosen the bolts holding the alternator frame to the vehicle. If you're looking for them, take a look at the mating surface between the alternator and the engine, as there may be shims present. They have most likely been installed by the manufacturer to help align the alternator and the pulley correctly. And if you see them, mark where they are placed. You will need to use them when you install the new alternator in exactly the same place that they were before. You can now remove the bolts holding the alternator. I always try to remove the bottom bolt first, and then when the top bolt is almost out, I'll support the weight of the alternator so it doesn't drop. It's heavy and can damage something underneath if you're not careful. You should be able to lift the alternator out of the engine bay and put it on the bench and do a quick comparison between the old one and the replacement. The mounting holes and location of the plug should be identical, even if the shape of the alternator is slightly different. To insert the new alternator, tighten the fastening bolts in place and check on the vehicle specifications. They may have torque settings for the alternator bolts. Now, connect up the leads and the cables. They should be in the identical location to the previous alternator. Well, now you can reinstall the pulley belt. Make sure it is correctly sitting in the grooves of the pulley and seated correctly on the other pulleys before you release the tensioner wheel. Now that everything's connected and installed, you may notice there are additional plugs on the alternator that you don't have cables for. You don't need to worry about them. As long as you install the same amount of cables that were connected to the original alternator, it will work. Well, now you can reconnect the battery terminal. If you disconnected both terminals, replace the red one first, then the black one. And while you have access to the terminals, it's a great idea to clean them and apply some terminal protector if you have it. Well, nice work on completing the alternator install. If you have any additional questions or issues, reach out to the autochargegarage tech team and get expert insights from our certified techs. We're here to help.